All right, let's move on to Golden State and Memphis. This is, I think, the second most interesting series in the first round. Another series where the regular season, it's tough to take things from because they had matchups very early in the season where they were healthy, but Memphis wasn't as dominant back then as they are now. And then as we get closer to the end of the season, you've got a game where Draymond Green was not playing. And then you have a game where Steph Curry and Draymond Green did not play. So again, these regular season series make it extremely difficult to predict because guys are just missing games, which is a whole other conversation we need to have about the NBA and stars missing games. But let's do our best to try to get as close of an indication of what we think these teams are going to do based on what we did see this year. So again, like I did with the Celtics-Bucks series, there were 94 minutes this year where the Warriors and the Grizzlies played each other and Steph and Ja were both on the floor together. In those minutes, the Warriors were plus 24 in 94 minutes. Excellent on the defensive end, pretty good on the offensive end. In those specific matchups with the Warriors, Ja Morant's drives, according to the NBA's tracking data, were slightly down over his regular season averages. His restricted area makes were down compared to his regular season averages. So a couple of things there that are indicative of the fact that Golden State has had more success guarding Ja than the rest of the league has. However, it gets complicated because that's kind of a team effort thing, and that can get a little tricky in the playoffs when coaches have more time to scout. And there are perimeter defenders for Golden State that are going to struggle guarding Ja. So let's start with Memphis on offense for that reason. So a couple things. Containing Ja is going to be the biggest predicament of the series. We talk about with Memphis, their biggest issue is they don't have half-court creators outside of Ja. Jaren Jackson Jr. Can attack matchups, but he struggles in traffic because he doesn't see the floor well. Desmond Bane is more of a slasher, a guy who can attack off of advantages. He's not a guy that's fantastic at creating his own shot or creating shots for other people. So Golden State will be able to key in on Ja. The trick is a lot of Golden State lineups, namely even the death lineup, the death lineup number 3 or whatever it is, with Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry in the backcourt, none of those 3 guys can keep Ja Morant in front. And so there will be potential for Memphis to play Golden State out of some of their favorite lineups. And as a result of that, it may put them in a predicament where they have to go with Gary Payton Jr. a lot more. Gary Payton Jr. played amazingly well in Game 5 against Denver, but he's not the same level of offensive player as a Jordan Poole or as a Klay Thompson. So those are those trade-offs. You get a guy like Gary Payton Jr. to have a better chance of containing Ja Morant, but the flip side is you suffer some losses on the offensive end of the floor. That will be tricky. However, Golden State, I do think, will have more capability to help and rotate out of that, especially with Draymond on the back line. Where I get most concerned for Golden State in this series is Memphis attacking the offensive glass. So, in the half-court settings this season, so just in the half-court this season, Memphis rebounded a third of their own misses, literally 33%. They're the best offensive rebounding team in the league. We talked a lot about how they stole games from Minnesota in the first round, particularly with Brandon Clark, but they stole games from Minnesota in the first round just by crashing the offensive glass. We specifically saw Denver give Golden State a lot of issues attacking the offensive glass. Main reason why, this is not a big Warriors team. They're only big when they play Kevon Looney next to Draymond with Andrew Wiggins, and even then they're not huge. They're just big enough to hang. And then there comes a whole bunch of offensive issues when you go with Kevon Looney in that regard as well. There's a trade-off, just like we were talking about with Gary Payton Jr. So their ability to keep Memphis off the glass is going to be an issue, just like it was with Denver, and it's going to give Memphis a lot of extra possessions, and that can be an issue. And then lastly, with Memphis on offense, I worry with Draymond Green with fatigue and foul trouble. So kind of like we saw in Game 5 against Denver, and just in general over the course of that series, Draymond started to wear down. Not because he's not capable, but because there's so little depth in the front court for Golden State. It was a need they never addressed this season. I don't know if they just thought James Wiseman was coming back or if they just didn't think they'd need it, but they never addressed their front court need for depth. And as a result, there is a ton on Draymond Green's plate. And so all it takes is Ja flying into the lane a couple times to start a game, or Jaren Jackson Jr. attacking on, quick catch and rip through moves to pick up a couple of quick fouls on Draymond, and he can be in trouble. And then fatigue, like we said, over the course of the series could be an issue. So front court depth is going to be the biggest area where Memphis has an advantage, wearing down Draymond, getting him in foul trouble, and crashing the hell out of the offensive glass. It's going to put Golden State in a predicament where they have to play bigger players, a lot more Otto Porter Jr., a lot more Gary Payton Jr. as a guy crashing on the wings to help defensive rebound. That could then lead to the cascading effect of causing Golden State problems on offense. So that's going to be the tricky part. Now, moving to Golden State on offense. First of all, this is where I think Golden State has their best advantage. During the regular season, Memphis was a better half-court offense team, according to Cleveland Glass, but obviously the postseason and the regular season are two completely different things. And you saw Minnesota give Memphis a ton of issues with their dribble containment, which was their best skill during the regular season, and it gave Memphis issues in the half court. During just this postseason, the Warriors are averaging 123.4 points per half court possession, which is 10.5 points better than Memphis managed in the first round against Minnesota. Minnesota's a better defense than Denver, so there's some context there, but I do trust the Golden State's decision-making in the half court more than I trust Memphis's decision-making in the half court. And this kind of takes me to that Minnesota series, which I thought was a really, really strange series, because in 6 games, and we picked Memphis in 6. I think we got 6 of the 8 first-round series is correct. We were wrong about Brooklyn, and we were wrong about Philly. But that was one of the series we were right about. However, the tricky thing is in the 6 games, Minnesota had controlling leads, second half, like significant advantages in the second half in 5 of the 6 games. So there's a bunch of different ways to look at that. Some of that is the game getting helter-skelter in transition and Minnesota having guys that aren't great at closing games, which we talked about. But part of it is, and this is something I pointed out on the show, Memphis flat out came out flat like 4 or 5 times in that series. That is a weird thing for a team that has expectations and hasn't been to the mountaintop before. And part of this is like we always talk about, you have to build up scar tissue over the years of having hard losses and pain and heartbreak that cause you to fear losing so much that you don't come out flat. And Memphis hasn't had that heartache yet. And here's the thing, against Minnesota, it makes you fall behind and you can recover. Against a team like Golden State, if you come out flat, you'll get beat because you're not coming back against them when they get a 20-point advantage against you. They've been there too many times, right? They've had too much pain and suffering over the course of their decade of basketball. They know what it takes. So a lot of Memphis's sloppiness and general just like youth is going to be something that I think is going to cause them problems in this series. Another thing is I'm going to be really curious to see how specifically how Steve Kerr finds ways to attack Ja Morant, because Golden State is not a dribble drive team really that much. Steph and Klay do drive to the basket off of attention from their three-point shooting, but every team in the league kind of gives up those types of drives because they're pressing up on the shot. I'm really curious to see if Jordan Poole in particular, because he is their best burst guard. He's their best quick first step, beat people to the basket type of guard. How much they can use Jordan Poole to attack Ja Morant. How willing is Memphis to give up switches to put Ja Morant specifically on Jordan Poole? Even further, can Golden State play Jordan Poole enough? They had to bench him in the fourth quarter of that Game 5 against Denver because he was struggling defensively and he was struggling on the defensive glass. Well, that could be an issue in this series as well, like we were talking about with trying to guard Ja. So that having Jordan Poole out there on the offensive end, a lot of that has to do with how well he holds up on the defensive end. Overall, my brain and everything that I know about these teams tells me that Golden State should win and win easy, that they should win in 5 games. But I think in general, the length and athleticism and size of Memphis, in conjunction with the pace that they play at, in conjunction with the way that they attack the offensive glass, I think there's a lot of potential to wear Golden State down and drag this series out. And so I'm picking Golden State, but I'm picking them in 7. I think this is going to be a long series. I think physical advantages are going to keep Memphis in the series as well as home court advantage, but I am going to favor the veteran team that is better and better with execution in the end, so I'm picking Golden State in 7.